Eric Mangini, Fox Sports NFL analyst. Eric, longtime Jets coach. He's got a big grin on his face because he just heard my 5 crazy predictions, and now he's ready to mock me.
You're supposed to stop drinking yesterday, Jason.
Bring on the scored, Eric. I don't know. Did any of that jump out at you as what the hell is wrong with this guy?
Well, I think the NFC North is the best division in football.
Sorry. I meant the best division in the NFC. NFC, sorry.
Okay. In the NFC?
Yeah. Is that a little more?
I guess you could be. That's a little bit more agreeable. Look, I like a lot of the things that Chicago did in the offseason. It's just hard for me to believe that Green Bay is going to be better with Jordan Love. I think Detroit had a great finish to the season last year, and they're getting a ton of love for what they did last year. But they had a terrible start to the season, and it's a little bit of you don't get to start exactly where you finish. You got to do all the things that you did well the year before. And you have to do better because nobody's underestimating you anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Steelers make the AFC Championship game. I mean, they're going to have a tough time in that division, J-Mac.
They will.
You got a better or Lamar Jackson, healthy. Deshaun Watson should be better. You got to deal with Joe Burrow. I love what they did towards the end of the year last year as well. But just getting out of that division is going to be rough.
Yeah, just to start in the NFC, Eric, you look around and it's like the Eagles, okay, they got hurt. They did lose 2 coordinators. Maybe you could tell us what it's like to lose both your coordinators in an offseason. But I just look at the rest of the top of the NFC like McCarthy. His offensive coordinator's gone, and he's now calling plays. The 49ers have a big question at quarterback. I know everybody thinks, Brock Purdy, pencil him in. I mean, listen, the guy won 7 games. He was the last pick in the draft. Are we sure, coming off a major surgery, like that he's going to be the guy who takes him to the promised land? And then there's the Seattle stuff. And it just feels like chaos could happen in the NFC.
Yeah, that one I could see having some legs. I like Derek Carr, and I really am cheering for him. I think that he's better than the situations he's been in. And hopefully this fresh start will be really good for him. Now, the thing is, when he's had a new offensive coordinator, had to learn a new offense, it's typically not great that first season. But just reading the things that he's been doing there and the way that he's been working at it, and you can't get any more motivated than he is. He gives him a shot. He gives him a real shot. And you're right, the NFC in a lot of ways is wide open.
I mentioned that the Rams are going to be very, very bad. Eric, I looked out at their defensive depth chart, and we're doing stuff like that in the offseason. It's bleak. And this idea that you can just pay a couple guys and win a Super Bowl, it felt like a lightning strike for the Rams. You look at that roster, they're devoid of talent. And Stafford's coming back off the injury. And, McVay almost retired.
It's one of those things where the way that they won the Super Bowl was not traditional at all, and they did give away a ton of draft picks, and they paid guys a lot of money. And when you do that, it's a little bit like buying with a credit card, and at some point you've got to pay for that credit card, and you've got to hit the reset button, and that's where they are in a lot of ways. And for them to move on from another big piece of the Super Bowl puzzle, I don't think is too outrageous, because they're much further away from that than they are from the team that we saw last season.
Eric, Josh McDaniels well. This one I'm about to ask you just missed my 5 crazy predictions, but all of a sudden things do not look great in Vegas. You had the Garoppolo injury we're hearing about late, and the surgery. You got Devontae Adams popping off, unhappy already. You got Josh Jacobs, unhappy. You look at the history of Garoppolo with Shanahan, awesome. Now Garoppolo has to go learn kind of a new offense with McDaniels. I mean, Eric, there's a world where by Thanksgiving we're talking about Josh McDaniels maybe being unemployed and the Raiders just saying, let's just tank. Let's tank-a-palooza. Let's go get Caleb Williams. What's your concern level with the Raiders?
Well, Garoppolo in Las Vegas makes a ton of sense because they were together in New England. So he knows that system, and he can be very successful in that system. It's just, how many games are you going to get out of him? And that's always the question with Jimmy is, are you getting the full season? Are you getting half a season? When's that other shoe gonna drop? And we've seen the injury, before he's even played a game. In terms of the noise coming out of there, look, there's often noise that comes out of organizations that make transitions, and when it doesn't go as everybody hopes that first year, that noise tends to get a little bit louder, and people are much less patient with head coaches than they ever have been. So Josh needs to get some wins and get some wins early, just to solidify that the approach he's taking and the philosophy that he's brought is the right approach, and can help them get where they need to be.
I want to ask you about quarterbacks and building a team, Eric. This is kind of a very random question, but I'm fascinated by this. We're seeing, obviously, teams that pay their quarterback top dollar. It's tough to get back to the Super Bowl. Sean Payton had come on here in the fall and said, listen, find me the last team that won a Super Bowl where their quarterback was the highest paid in the league. Now, Patrick Mahomes may be changing that, possibly. But we're seeing some questions with Josh Allen, Joe Burrow and Herbert about to get paid. Dak and the Cowboys have kind of slid back since paying him. I am curious. You obviously had Chad Pennington with the Jets, a nice playoff run. You had Favre. Then in Cleveland, couldn't really find a quarterback. I'm curious, where are you right now on the state of the NFL and building a team? And, there's some quarterbacks last year who made moves. Russell Wilson was not great in Denver. Matt Ryan went to the Colts. And remember, there were some expectations that, they could win the division. And now he's like going to the booth. It didn't work out for another quarterback who changed zip codes. I'm spacing on him right now. But it just feels like we're at a weird time in the NFL.
But that just goes to show you how desperate teams will be when you don't have a quarterback. And when you don't have a quarterback, you're willing to make a trade like Denver did for Russell Wilson, or what Cleveland did for Deshaun Watson. And because you live through that life, and when you don't have a quarterback that puts you in a position to win every game, or at least gives you a chance to win every game, everything else has to be right. And it's a really difficult space to be in. So if you're paying your guy the top amount of money in the league, or he's one of the top 5 or 10 highest paid guys, typically that's a high class problem. That means your quarterback is really good. And when you've got a really good quarterback, you got a chance. And the Jets, to me, got a steal in a lot of ways with Aaron Rodgers for what they had to pay for him versus what other teams had to pay for Russell Wilson and Deshaun. It's a great situation, and it shows you again what you're willing to do when you're living without a quarterback.
Yeah, there was a team, I think Washington went all in on Carson Wentz. Remember that a couple years ago? That's our guy. We got Carson Wentz. And that flame out happened. I was looking at a list, Eric, of current free agents in the league. And again, age obviously matters and salary matters. But these are just some of the names of guys who are currently not signed in the NFL. Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Hopkins, Carson Wentz, Zeke Elliott, Leonard Fournette, who was pivotal on those Brady Super Bowl teams, Jarvis Landry, Jadeveon Clowney, Melvin Ingram, Robert Quinn, Ndamukong Suh, Akeem Hicks, Miles Jack. Eric, I'm sure every year in July there's a list of good players. To me, I'm looking at this list. I didn't even mention Kareem Hunt, unsigned. It's not like he's a fossil. What's going on right now? Are we at a league where quarterbacks are paid so highly that you just have to find work around the margins for several other positions?
No, I don't think it's that. I think the league has a way of humbling you, and all those guys have done incredible things throughout the course of their career. But when you get towards the back end of your career, when you've moved teams a few different times, typically you're not going to get the salary that you're hoping for. And there has to be a time where the player takes a step back and say, okay, this is what I'm willing to play for, and maybe build in some incentives, and you've got to make some concessions when you're sitting in free agency at this point. The other thing is there's only a finite amount of money, and if you may spend it on the quarterback or however you want to construct your roster, but as you get closer and closer to the season, there's less and less money to go get a guy, and unless you're willing to mortgage the future, and it's hard to mortgage the future a guy for a guy that you don't have an overwhelming conviction for.
All right, Eric, I'll get you out of here on a Patriots question, obviously, because I don't like the Patriots, and you know the organization well. This whole Mac Jones stuff, I don't want to say he's, pushing back against Belichick, but we're talking about a 40-year age gap practically between this head coach and player. Mac Jones, we know he was a little rough around the edges at Alabama. He could be vocal about his dislike for stuff. Belichick just got him Devontae Parker, I thought was a bad deal. Juju Smith-Schuster, a sus deal. I don't know, man. Something seems to be going on there. I can't put my finger on it. I don't want to say Belichick and Jones are battling, because that's nonsense. Belichick's the greatest coach ever. Mac Jones hasn't done jack squat in the NFL. But what's your read on what's happening in New England? And it might just go back to the quarterback stuff we talked about. It's like it's tough to find one.
Well, look, Mac Jones came into the best possible situation you could come into. He came into an offense that was built for his skill set, that he didn't have to win every game. They play complementary football. It's smart football. It's a system that he has familiarity with in a lot of ways, and they were able to be successful. And I think he looked at that success as maybe being a little bit too much of him and not as much of the system that he inherited. And he had Josh McDaniels and he had Mick Lombardi. He had a great offensive staff. So you lose that staff to Las Vegas. And then what does he say? He says, well, I've had a ton of offense coordinators sort of not disrespecting, but not really appreciating how good a group he had. And so you fast forward, they have the experiment that they have last year. Things don't go well. And instead of him staying in the building, word is that he went out of the building and looked for answers outside of New England. And that's not something you do. It's not how you operate there. And so if you want to buck the system as a young player, then you're going to have to deal with the consequences. And you've heard Mac Jones talk about trying to get the respect of the building back and trying to make sure that everybody is confident in him. I can say it's easier to maintain the respect than it is to lose it and get it back. So he's going to have some challenges this year, especially if he doesn't play well and consistent early and often.
You make it sound like you're talking about the mafia going outside the organization, Eric. I guess maybe, listen, Belichick's been around forever in New England. He's an institution there. Mac Jones, man, that sounds kind of bleak, does it not?
Well, it depends on where you stand. If you're a Jets fan, it's not that bleak. If you're a Dolphins fan or a Bills fan, you're probably not that bummed out about it. If you're a New England fan and you've grown up with Tom Brady and just the wealth of riches that you've had with that situation, this is a big transition, and you're getting used to life without a legend.
Yeah. All right, Eric Mangini, Fox Sports NFL analyst. Thanks a lot, Eric, for taking the time, and enjoy the rest of the holiday week.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.